Deciding to homeschool always brings around the socialization and social life debate. One of the most amazing parts of stepping into this decision is the community. And it's just gold, you guys. This community is gold. Homeschool co-ops are an amazing way to tap into this community. And I'm really excited to chat with Sarah McCubbins today, who has some serious insight and experience, you guys, all the depth here, all the wisdom here, into finding and starting perhaps your own co-op or just finding one that you feel like you would fit into well. So I'm really excited to get into this. Thanks, Sarah, and welcome.
Thank you. This is one of my favorite topics. Some of my lifelong friends have come from homeschool co-ops. I've been homeschooling for 16 years and I've been in co-ops for 15 years, and my best friends are all people I met in that community. So
I can relate. It's a deep bond when you recognize like this is what you've decided to do. So if you wouldn't mind, you've got a lot on your plate every day. Yeah. And I want people to hear just how well equipped you are to deal with this. So you said, coming up on 2 decades of homeschool co-ops and homeschooling. Tell us a little bit about your journey to this point.
Okay. Well, we didn't intend to homeschool. We were intending to send our children to school, and you know how God kind of weaves that path. And we did end up homeschooling, and we were foster parents for 8 years. So that kind of lifestyle, homeschool lifestyle, let us kind of be more flexible, which was great. We have 9 children, and for the first 14 years or so, we pretty much exclusively homeschooled. Maybe it was the 13 years. And then I kind of had a mental break down almost and sent them all to school for a year. So I did get that break. Now I have most like half in school, half are homeschooled. I have 3 that are graduated. So I've managed to do that. And our homeschool journey started with more like an online charter school. That did not work for us. And we met some homeschoolers who said, hey, come try our co-op. And that's how I kind of fell into it. And I've been part of the same group. It's taken many turns. It has not stayed the same for all those years, but I've been part of the same group for 15 years. So
that's amazing. And I think that's a really good point, because I know I come from classroom teaching where, it's the same thing pretty much every year. And when we got into homeschooling, I was like, great, school at home. No, it's not. It's completely different. And the flexibility that it's required over the years, going from tinies or 4 tinies to kind of a little bit bigger, it's all different. And your family is going to change, your kind of family culture or interest, kids' interest, and the world around us is going to change. There's going to be new opportunities for them to take part in. So I love that you've kind of gone with the flow of things, and it seems like your co-op has too.
That's right. So and I guess I forgot to mention I was the director for 6 years, so that's where a lot of my experience suggestions come from, because when you see the back end of any organization, you realize there's certain patterns that are, this is successful when you see it, or this is common patterns that, this didn't work for people. Sure. So that's probably why I wanted to talk about it, because hey, if you want to find a co-op, everybody's excited, but then when it doesn't work, it can be a huge disappointment.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, we're going to get into the specifics here, but let's just back up a little bit, because talking about kind of a social life, this is one of the first things that people confront if they're kind of coming from a public school or private school setting into a homeschool setting. A lot of times the first interaction is, oh, but what about a socialization? What about socialization? What about a social life? They're going to be all alone at home, or they're just going to have such a small circle. Talk to us a little bit about how these benefits have kind of come out of a social life in co-ops or just in being around other kids.
Okay. Well, I'll just tell you that growing up, I was that kid that had a hard time making friends. I really, really struggled, probably was on the spectrum. That wasn't a thing when we were kids, but I was really struggled. So one thing I really like about co-ops is they present a consistent opportunity to see the same people over and over again. A lot of times when people start homeschooling, I'll hear them say, like, once they decide that they get over the initial hurdle and they start, and if they have a super social kid, they might be like, oh no, my kid isn't making friends. This isn't working. Maybe mom's introvert, the kid's an extrovert. I don't know. people are struggling. And then I start seeing all the suggestions, and the suggestions are always the same. It's like, go to park days, go to the park, go to the library, go to maybe church. There's like all these random suggestions. But if you're a person that struggles to make friends, you need something consistent over and over. I read a blogger once who called it crisscrossing. Like when your life can crisscross somebody else's life multiple times in a week, even, then it's better. So if somebody plays a sport with a kid and can go to co-op with them, and maybe they also go to the same park day or whatever, something like that, it's going to make it easier to make friends. So in my case, our co-op became kind of the foundation. And then my kids played soccer with some of them. They went to church with some of them. They would see these kids multiple places during the week, not always, not all year round, but over a period of time. So,
I love that. I love that picture. I agree. My experience tells me the same thing. Yeah. And even if it's not weekly, even if, I'm thinking of a few friends that we see like twice a year because we celebrate things. We live abroad. We live in South America. And so we've found other homeschooling, bicultural families down here who celebrate the same way that we do. So we spend Thanksgiving and Easter with them. And that's something beautiful and very crisscrossy that we all have. And there are other interests that we see people more often in those park days, in those library days. So hear us when we say this can take on lots of different forms, and co-op is one way that could happen. But if you've got some other, time, financial situations that don't allow co-op, these other ideas can kind of provide that social.
That's right. And I had other life situations that made some of those things more difficult. So co-op was a good fit with lots of kids. It was like, as a mom, I could show up with my herd of children and we could all like walk in the building, and it kind of met that once a week, option. But people that have more flexibility, less children, whatever, there's tons of other options. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, well, co-ops are kind of a hot topic, in those Facebook groups. They're kind of a hot topic. You guys know which ones we're talking about. And a lot of people start to do the research early. They want to find one that works well for them, that's in their area, it's easy to get to. When people start looking, what would you suggest they start with? What should they kind of search for first?
When they're first starting to look for co-ops, I have kind of I say start with your circle and work your way out. So it's always best if you can join a group where you already know someone, because they're going to give you all the inside information, right? They're going to be your contact person. They're going to be the person that says like, well, this is how it actually works. But maybe you don't know anybody like that's in your friend group or from church. And so eventually, once you work through your circle, work your way out, you end up in these Facebook groups, right? Like that's where you end up. And people, this is what I always see people do. They'll say like, hey, I'm new to homeschooling and I'd like to find a co-op. I've got 3 kids. Anybody know a great co-op? They'll put this like real general thing out there. I see it over and over. And I want to say, narrow it down, like tell us where you live and tell us, how old your kids are and give us a few facts. So if you're going to end up in those Facebook groups, they can be amazing resources. But if you're going to ask for suggestions, be specific. Just not in what kind of group necessarily, but tell people where you live, how many kids you have, what ages they are, give them some details. I know people are sometimes hesitant to do that with strangers, but if you want to find a good fit, you need to ask specifically, and ask in several groups too, because often there are several groups in an area, and some groups are kind of hidden, like intentionally, they don't really want everyone to know about them, but they're okay if you find them. So you sometimes have to ask in a few places.
Yeah. And my husband is in IT security. And so he would say, don't tell them where you live. Don't tell them how old and how many kids you are. So if we're not broadcasting in Facebook groups, is there like a I don't know. I'm asking purely out of curiosity. Is there like a registry?
No. So there are some lists I think there's a website called, like, I'm going to look while I talk to you.
Mhm.
Homeschoolmom.com, I think, maintains one. I think that's what it is. Should have looked this up ahead of time. Yeah, the
Yeah.
homeschoolmom.com. That one does have a list,
Mhm.
but it gets outdated because homeschool groups, it gets outdated. Like, I mean, I updated our registry, but it had been outdated for 3 years. We no longer met
Mhm.
in the same place, the same contact person. None of it was the same,
Yeah.
not even the same website. So you can go on their website. I have seen that, and I know I've put a listing there, but there is no master list of
Gotcha.
homeschool groups. And so that's where I say, like, you might have to trust God and, like, put a little bit of information out there
Yeah.
to get something back
Yeah.
that is helpful for you. At the very least, give people, like, the county you live
Yeah.
in or something like that, because I'll tell you, the downside of this is I get people contacting us all the time. They found our group because I put it out there all the time. They found our group, and then I say, "Where do you live?" And they'll tell me their town, and they're like 45 minutes away. And I'm going to say, "No go."
Yeah.
I will be very generous and kind, but what I found over 16 years is that families that live far away don't it's a long
Yeah.
distance.
Yeah.
So it's hard to plug in. It's not hard to make friends, but I'm a mom. I don't really want to drive 45 minutes for a play date
Right.
every time my
Right.
kids want to see their friends.
Yeah.
Um, those families don't tend to stay in the same group. They might stay for a year, they might enjoy it, and they're like, this is a lot. And so then
Yeah.
they leave. So I generally encourage people who contact us from a distance to say, hey, I think there's some groups in your area or closer to you. I would recommend that.
Okay.
And again, if people just share a little information,
Yeah.
something, it helps
Yeah.
you narrow it down and not accidentally end up registering people that are
Yeah.
kind of,
In the wrong state.
in the wrong place.
Yeah. Okay. I love it. Now, I think that would be like super doable. Give your general area,
Yep.
get a few responses, check in with the contact person there. So that makes total sense. And then when they're checking it out, there are things that are going to be that they need to ask about.
Yes,
Prices and what's included. Are there any responsibilities? Are there any obligations?
that's right.
Is there something that you would say like, whoa, that's too much to ask? Oh, that's
No,
too expensive,
no, no,
or
no,
it's
no.
just
In
there's a
fact,
huge range?
I think I gave you a link to a blog post that has it has 2 downloads in it. One for, like, co-ops, and one if you're looking more at, like, hybrid type groups that are, paid drop-off groups that you would be looking at. No, ask all the questions
Mhm.
because, first of all, whoever's leading the group wants you to ask all the questions, and oftentimes, like on websites, people will our group has, like, a facts page. We have a handbook. Definitely read a group's handbook before you decide to join. Most of the time they require it, but we're busy. And so sometimes we accidentally skip that step. If there's something that seems off, ask questions,
Mhm.
right? Like, it could just be that the co-op leaders were busy and didn't update something, or it could be that there's something off. Some groups are more controlling. They want to control more of your life,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
other organizations. And
Yeah.
some are very relaxed. And depending on your personality, you might find that certain groups work better for you. I found that families with young children really like ones that have lower commitment levels because you have little children, and showing up weekly and having to volunteer and do all the things might feel like a lot for the mom.
Mhm.
um, but then again, if you have older children and you want some accountability, those real flexible
Yeah.
groups might not serve the same purpose for you.
Mhm.
So, like, asking about, yeah, your responsibilities, the costs, and also ask if cost is a factor. Ask about discounts, or like, a lot of groups have ways that you can get a big discount if you are teaching or something
Mhm.
like that. So
Mhm.
um, not everything's advertised,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
like, in our group, we usually require that you attend for a year before you teach a main class. But
Mhm.
if you have a background in teaching, then we would waive that requirement.
Uh,
So, but we don't put that all out there.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
if people have questions or
Ask.
concerns, we'd rather they not just, like, say, oh, can't do it.
Yeah.
We have a lot of people that make payments. We don't really advertise that too much either, but it's possible.
Mhm.
so it
Yeah.
makes it affordable. So
That's awesome. Okay. So cool. And this can take a lot of forms, you guys. I'll just one quick anecdote. We know we have some friends who live in Arizona. Arizona has an interesting educational savings account type program where you can get certain amount of money. There's some oversight there. People have opinions on it. It's fine. Some people choose to use that money, and that money can be used toward some co-ops. Depends on the co-op again, and depends on some of the oversight. But one of the cases that I know, there's this kind of academy, and they meet in a church's old building that they weren't using. They've set up classrooms. These classrooms are multi-purpose. So one's going to be a Spanish classroom, one's going to be a chemistry classroom. Kids can pay, I think it's like $350 for like a semester. They meet once a week. And then the rest of it is online kind of Google Classroom work. So this is not an online class, but it's also kind of a co-op because there's this social, fabric that gets knit, and there's, dances and social things that the families do together and stuff like that. So it's just, this can take so many forms. And so I would encourage you, do your research, ask the questions. I think that's what I'm getting so far. Ask the questions.
Ask the questions. And that probably is a hybrid type group. So there's regular co-ops, which are heavily volunteer based. And then hybrid groups are ones that usually use paid teachers. So that's what that probably is using. And both can be awesome, and they can serve different purposes. Like working parents can really benefit from like some of the hybrid groups where they don't have to volunteer, but families where income is tighter might benefit from more the volunteer model because they have more time than money. So both is good.
Okay. I love it. Now, if people don't have a co-op in their area, they've done all the research, they can't find it. Could we create one? Should we create one? Who should create one? How do we go about creating one?
Okay. Well, it's kind of a big and a small question because a homeschool co-op is really just a gathering of people that want to do something together, like a homeschool families that want to do something together. So you can make this as simple or as complicated as you want. And I would say that if you're just getting started and you're really looking for community, keep it simple to start with, especially your first year. So the way you go about doing it is first figure out what you want, right? Like it's funny how we skip that step because we're just like, I want that, but we don't stop and think what we actually want and why. So why do you want a homeschool co-op? Like when we asked people who were coming to ours, some people wanted, friends for their kids, but a lot of people wanted accountability. So that kind of a co-op is going to look different than a bunch of moms who have young children who really want play dates and some socialization for moms. So you really ask yourself, what do you want and why? And then you're going to start talking to people, right? You got to find like-minded people who want the same thing as you. And again, it's kind of start with your circle and we work your way out. You're going to start with your friends, your family. I want to start a co-op that does this thing. And you can work your way all the way out to Facebook groups. Now, again, perfect strangers. Some people might not be comfortable with that. Sure. I'm pretty comfortable with that. So that doesn't really bother me, but I get that not everybody is. I will say that if your group stays super small, your options are much more limited. So if you say, we want to offer all the academic classes, but there's only 6 families in our co-op, that's not going to happen. Okay. You just can't do it. The math doesn't work. So our co-op is academic and elective classes. And so we have academic for all the ages in the morning and then elective in the afternoon. So for a co-op like that, you need like 25 families minimum to make it go. But if you're just doing a play date co-op where all moms get together once a week at a park or something like that, or a field trip co-op, you could do that with just like 3, 4, 5 families. And that's super flexible, low commitment level. Obviously, if you want something, if you start to build a co-op, then you have to add structure. But like essentially at the beginning, it's just finding like-minded people, deciding what you want to do, asking for input, and then you put together a plan, right? Like, and if you're too large, then you have to start going like, we need a building, we need insurance, we need to get organized. And that's a whole nother thing. I have a course called
You have a whole
Homeschool
course
Co-op
on
in a
it.
Box, right?
Yeah.
Like I have Homeschool Co-op in a Box. So if you need to like work your way through all the steps and you need to know like, where do I find the organizational documents or legal things, that does exist. But if you're just starting and you don't have people, you can start one in your house. Like you don't have to have like a church building. If you do go to church somewhere, they might be willing to let you use a room or two, once a week just to hang out with people. But yeah, anyone can start one. And I think it's great if you start one with people that first. Like, even though I say the Facebook group, if you don't have a handful of friends in there too, it's probably going to be hard.
Yeah. Well, and thinking about like the culture of a group of those friendships that are really going to crisscross well over the long term, you want to think about what kind of values are being brought in and what kind of that long-term goal is. So I love that your first thought was, what is the purpose of this? What are we really trying to get out of it?
Yeah.
Because
and I will say our group, it kind of almost dissolved at one point. People kind of were shifting gears in life, and then we had to restructure, and we tried to be all things to all people for that first restructured year, because we said 20 people, 20 families. We really needed like 25, but we were like, hey, you could be a classical homeschooler, you can be an unschooler, you can be a Charlotte Mason, you can be we were like, whatever you want to be, come on, we'll work it out. And it was okay, but there were a lot of stressors in there because we tried to be all things to all people. So if you can narrow it down and be like, we're not going to be for the class, we're not going to do classical and unschooling because like they're different. Like don't promise, don't over deliver, don't over promise. Like over deliver, but don't over promise. So
I think it's really cool. And I think one other wise thing to do might be shop around, ask what people love about their co-op. Even if they live in Wyoming and you're in Virginia, like figure out what people love. And kind of crowdsource those really important pillars that maybe keep people in a co-op for years and years.
And actually, here's a question you should ask. If you find a co-op that you think looks amazing, ask them why people leave. Because every co-op loses people every year. Like that doesn't mean they're a bad co-op. That just means, but like, what are the biggest reasons why people leave? And like if you asked me that about our co-op, I would say, there's sometimes people put their kids back in school. Sometimes families with really young children joining an academic co-op with more expectations, they it feels overwhelming. And so they felt overwhelmed and they were just like, we're not ready for this. So they, I kind of discourage families with just preschoolers from joining because I know that they might get overwhelmed. There's certain patterns. And, a person who's in charge, who has any kind of integrity, who's been doing it for any amount of time, should be willing to tell you, like, why people might not, what things cause them not to work out, right? Because
absolutely,
co-op style is different. So,
and we had talked briefly about smaller families versus larger families. That might be an important factor to consider too. What would you say to families with maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 kids who are entering a co-op that may have families with more kids? What types of roadblocks might they run into?
Yeah, and in my experience, I've seen that specifically families with one child, you have so many options when you have just one child. Like a lot of times the finances are different. You can obviously follow your child's very unique interests wherever they may go. And so families with just one child, when they come to a co-op, oftentimes if their child doesn't love it right away, we've seen them kind of bail out quickly because my child doesn't like something about it. On the flip side, as a mom with lots of kids, if I paid money, joined a co-op, and one of my kids didn't like something, I'm not talking about a big thing. I'm just talking about a preference. Maybe they don't like that teacher. They haven't found a friend yet, something like that. I'm like, yeah, sorry, kiddo. Like, we're in this right now and we're going to work that out, but we're all in this. I had like 9 kids in a co-op at one point. Like there's no way I could cater to their individual interests. So obviously that doesn't mean like having one child bad, lots of kids good. It just means that before you go into a co-op setting, if you know that you tend to move according to your child's interests, you would ask more questions to make sure it's a better fit before you join, spend money. Most co-ops are not going to refund your money if you don't like it.
Mhm.
So ask more questions about your specific needs, your specific interests, or come visit. Like a lot of times in the spring, co-ops will let you come visit.
Yeah.
So if you can go check it out ahead of time, you can avoid, making a wrong choice for your family.
I love that. And obviously we can't predict everything that might, make our kids bristle or whatever. But I think there is something to be said for resilience and prepping kids for situations. So if there is some way that we as parents can, again, ask questions and have a little bit of a prep time, like the runway to co-op, what does that runway look like? It might look like, hey, what do you think? We usually do school here at home by ourselves, but what do you think if there's a kid next to you who's learning things differently? Or what if there's somebody who explains things in a way that you don't love, it doesn't seem like what we do here at home. It's just a different style. What do you think? What could we do? Could you ask some questions? I mean, giving them those tools that, guys, they're kids. They need the tools. And a lot of times it falls on us when we're in a new situation, like entering into a co-op. That might be, again, more questions to ask and more time to kind of make that run up toward this big new social situation. So I love it. Okay, let's take a little bit of a turn. I want to hear some stories, Sarah. You've got so many years of experience under your belt.
Oh boy.
I've been a part of a few like informal groups, but never like a formal co-op. What are some of the highlights that you've seen over the years? It'd be great to hear some stories, maybe some wins.
Oh, gee. Okay, let's see. So I have, I'll just go straight to graduation because, there is nothing like graduation to show you, when you're a homeschool mom and you're in the thick of it, you're not quite sure if you're failing or not, like pretty much every day, because your child's not usually coming up to you saying, hey, mom, good job. You're doing it, right? And your husband might be looking at you like you're crazy and change your clothes and take a shower and you're not sure. So graduation has always been such a highlight because our homeschool group does a graduation every year. And it's such a cool thing because we've known each other, a lot of us, for a long time. And you see these kids that you knew when they were 8 and they get to graduation and, each family gets like 5 or 10 minutes to do this really special presentation. But I will just tell you the funniest story was during COVID because we were not supposed to be gathering, right? And so nobody really knew like when it was all going to go away or if it wasn't or whatever. So this is 2020. My oldest son was graduating. We had an outdoor graduation because we were trying to be semi-compliant. We were out at a campground. And just as the prayer started, just as the first girl starts playing a beautiful song, in the very back, we hear screaming and yelling. And we're at a campground with a swimming area, but we were off to the side. And there is an all-out brawl happening behind 100 people that should not be gathering outside, right? And there's a brawl happening, and there's these people gathering, and I thought, is that our homeschool group back there? Is somebody in our group beating somebody up? Oh my gosh! And I'm in charge, so I just keep the thing going. And no, it didn't end up being our group, but the police did come. We had all these people there, and we pulled off the whole recognition night and graduation. And when it was all over, we've been to many of these, but when it was all over, my kids said, Mom, that was the best graduation ever. Will they all be like that? And I was like, oh, please no.
I hope not.
I hope not. So it was just one of those, we had all these peaceful graduations for all these years. And then when it was my turn to have my first child graduate, we just had all this craziness go. So gosh. That's an extreme example. We've never had that. Praise the Lord. But it is funny because when you're in a homeschool group, just like any other group, and I'm sure when you were teaching, there's always these situations that come up that you're like, this isn't in the handbook. It's not they didn't prepare me for this in college. How do I follow this? So those are always the situations where you know, you just,
You roll with it.
glad you're
Yeah.
there with friends that you have something to laugh about later. And I heard a great quote recently that said, there is no community without common memories. And I was like, I love that so much
Beautiful.
because,
Yeah.
you know, since I've done this for so long, I have all these common memories with like a big group of people, and you know, they're not all good memories necessarily, but they're with the same people, kind of like you have that with your children and your family. This is with an extended group of people, and I think that's what I would love for people to look for when they look for a co-op is like a lot of times people think they're looking for a group to take classes with or something, but what they should really be looking for are people that they would consider doing life with, like beyond this year, beyond next year. There's like a percentage that will just pivot every year. Like, oh, we tried that. It's like popcorn. We tried this, we tried that. But if you can find people that will do life with you, and like you are building this like rich fabric that extends beyond, you know, any amount of money that you paid or your free group, you're building something that like you can fall back on.
Yeah. Or that random, you know, craft class, chemistry class, whatever you thought you were there for.
That's
I love that.
That's what people go looking
huge.
for the chemistry and the craft class. But what they really should be looking for is the community and those relationships, because, you know, you can actually pay money and drop your kid off and take a craft class or find it online or whatever. But relationships, you can't just like pay money to get that. So
exactly. I love that. Okay. Well, if you guys have made it this far with us, then you know that Sarah is full of wisdom and she's got a lot of resources. I know people are going to have questions for you, Sarah. So if you guys are not yet following her, make sure you find her on socials. Those will all be linked below. And you can go over to the 10minutemomentum.com and find more things over there. Your course, Co-op in a Box. Is that correct?
Homeschool Co-op in a Box. Yep.
Homeschool Co-op in a Box. And then just keep learning from her, because I feel like there is so much wisdom that we, with younger kids or just starting out this journey, can really glean things to do and things not to do. And, you know, those little pats on the back, just chill out, sweetie, just chill out, relax, take a minute, it'll be fine, that sort of thing. So I love it. Sarah, this has been so fun. I love when we can find kind of kindred spirits in the journey that our kids are on, and that we're on with them, because I think this is definitely a privilege that we get to be able to walk with our kids as they learn and as they grow up as people. So as we kind of wrap, I would love to hear a little bit about what you're looking forward to in the next 6 months, either personally, professionally. What's going on with you?
Well, let's see. I'm kind of in like a fun, like my kids are all like, my older ones are older. So we have all these like fun life things on the radar. My oldest is graduating from college in like a month, which is very exciting. You know, I did it. Yay. He was homeschooled all the way through. He, even went to school, but he was homeschooled all the way through. He's worked full time and he's paid for his own college. So he's graduating debt free. We did the thing that people always say, can you do it? And we did it. And I have a lot of like little side things that I'm doing. I feel like I'm in a good place now where, you know, as a homeschool mom, you really invest so much of your time and energy in your children. And one of the realizations I had a couple of years ago is that it was time to invest in me. And that's like a challenge I give to other moms, is like, don't wait to invest in you, because you can grow, you can kind of do your own homeschool journey alongside your children, where you're growing and learning something that you love, you know. And that's really what 10-minute momentum was for me, was this opportunity to pursue things that I was interested in and not wait till my youngest graduated, because she's 6. So like if I waited till she graduated, I was going to be like almost 60, you know, like it's gonna be a while. So I'm always like doing lots of things. I'm sure you are too.
That's so cool. No, but I love that, homeschooling alongside your kid. I feel like for my business as well. My oldest is watching me and she goes, Mom, I have a proposal for you. She goes, when I finish language arts, she's like almost done with language arts. And I'm like, great, we'll just do book studies. She's like, I have a proposal. Can you give me a $10 loan? I'm going to open an Etsy store and I'm going to sell my Canva creations. And I was like, heck yeah, let's do it. So it seems like that she sees me editing and selling my printables. And she's like, of course, that would be really fun. So we're moving into entrepreneur subjects next, which is really fun. So it's cool to grow alongside your kids. So I'm excited for you.
Love that. Cool. Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, you guys who are watching, I know Sarah would echo this as well. And I look into the camera every time when I say this, you guys, because I really want you to hear it. Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. It's really important. Happy teaching.